Hello, everybody. When the Civil War ended, the fighting was over, but the postbellum era was still a tumultuous time for America. The South was decimated, and Atlanta was burnt down. A lot of the crops were burnt. A lot of the buildings were burnt. And so the federal government came up with Reconstruction, and Reconstruction was a way to bring those southern states back into the Union. And with that, they had just freed hundreds of thousands of slaves, and they would need to be taken care of, as well as the states being brought back into the United States. So this caused a big problem. But Reconstruction, in Eric Foner's book, A Short History of Reconstruction, he says there was a time where they were doing really well in Reconstruction. And it says the number of black legislators rose dramatically in several states, and even where it did not, more blacks acquired committee chairmanships and seats in state senates. Local black official holding also continued to increase. However, that only lasted about 10 years. And then Reconstruction was over, and it was still a tumultuous time. Now, the person that I want to talk about is Andrew Carnegie. Now, Andrew Carnegie, when he came to the United States, he was 13 years old. His family came from Scotland. He was born in 1835 in Scotland, and then his family brought him over to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1848. And early in his life, he started working for the telegraph company, and all the telegraph companies were tied to the railroads. So he was able to learn about railroading, the communications that was taking place. And soon after working in the telegraph company, he became an assistant to Tom Scott, who was the superintendent of Pennsylvania Railroad. Now there, Andrew Carnegie learned a lot of things about the railroad industry, and the railroad industry was booming. They were building lots of things going out west, expanding. They had to expand back in the South and rebuild that. And out west, they were expanding like crazy. So Andrew Carnegie, being sharp, he was like, hey, this takes a lot of steel to produce. And some of the bridges, and what he learned was it takes so much steel to run these railroads that he was thinking, hey, this would be a good thing to invest in. So he invested in some bridge companies, and then pretty soon he perfected a way to make the steel stronger so that they could make bridges longer. Now, after he invested in some of these bridge companies, then he started some bridge companies and bought them out. And then later in life, he went into the steel business with someone in a joint venture, and they created the J. Edgar Thompson Steel Works. And later, after the J. Edgar Thompson Steel Works was so successful that later he turned it into, or started, Andrew Carnegie, or Carnegie Steel. Now, Carnegie was really smart because he identified that steel was going to be an industry or a material that would be needed for a lot of things, for a lot of buildings, for bridges, for railroads, and a lot of things in the country, and buildings and things like that. So Andrew Carnegie, from his humble beginnings, was able to build this massive empire. Now, the thing of it was, there was a lot of people working in his steel mill, and they had a lot of people trying to form unions at the time, and the workers trying to form unions, and the company trying to block the union, trying to keep them out and not wanting them in, is understandable. But the workers wanting better pay, less hours, is also understandable. But Carnegie ran into a problem in 1892 with the Homestead strike. They struck his steel mill. Now, he was over in Scotland at the time, but a man by the name of Frick, Henry Clay Frick, was running his factories. And Henry Clay Frick hired the Pinkerton agents to guard the steel mill. Well, in July 6th of 1892, the striking steel workers and the Pinkerton agents clashed in violent protest, and a lot of the striking workers were killed. Now, this was a big blotch on Carnegie's reputation, and he hated that. He didn't like it. I mean, he stuck up for Frick in defending the steel company, but he didn't like that to be part of his reputation. And in many ways, his life can show you that he went from humble beginnings, but became an industrial giant within that time. And many others did too. Rockefeller and Ford and some of the others, industrialization spread in the United States, and they had there was what became a wider gap of the haves and the have-nots, the rich and the poor. While the workers were working and helping these titans get rich, they weren't getting paid that much. However, that was the time. But Andrew Carnegie certainly was one of the titans of industry back in the postbellum era. And it just gives you, I think his life gives you a good idea of the different aspects of how society was back then, you know. And that's my speech on Andrew Carnegie. Thank you and have a great day.